Stop.
Something ridiculous.
Wrigley? Oh, nice. Now I see the timer. What's up, everybody? My name is Caroline King from Bitch Beer Podcast, co-moderating with Eugenia Brown, Black Beer Chick. We are so excited. Welcome to Show the Fuck Up.
That's right.
Thank you for being here. Like I said, Caroline King. I run Bitch Beer Podcast based here in Atlanta. Eugenia, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Eugenia. I'm also a Black Beer Chick, and I'm just a huge advocate for women in the craft beer space. And so super excited to be here moderating this panel with two guys that definitely are advocates for women. And so, yeah, excited to have this conversation.
Very excited. And then a little background on Bitch Beer. I started Bitch Beer about 4.5 years ago because I didn't know shit about beer and I wanted to learn. And no offense, Aaron, I was tired of being mansplained by bearded white guys. Aaron's not one of them. It's okay. You're an ally. But no, it's been an amazing journey getting to learn people, getting to meet amazing people like Eugenia and our two amazing guys here. So we're just very excited to be co-moderating this. I definitely jumped at the opportunity just to do anything with Eugenia, really. LaTroya! Oh my gosh, we love you. LaTroya, she's brewer at Five Wits Brewing. Oh my gosh, up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So Myron, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Myron Green, co-host of the Atlanta Podcast. We're a local podcast here. I'm talking about everything from news, culture, events, foolishness, of course, and we all do it while drinking local craft beer throughout the episode. So episodes get better the more we drink.
These are facts. These are facts.
Right. I'm glad to be here to talk about how we as men can show up for the women in our industry and just in general.
That's great. Thank you for being here. Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Aaron Gore, Senior Director of Business Development for Bavana, the world's first brewery accelerator. Just privileged to be here in this, virtual room with everybody here. I've known Eugenia for quite a while. I've been familiar with Caroline and Myron's work for quite a while as well. And I can only promise that I will do my best not to mansplain. And in general, I'm just obnoxious to everybody. So,
The fact that you're worried about it tells us that you're one of the good ones. It's fine.
Exactly.
So just even like that topic of mansplaining. So when's the first time you ever heard this term? And when did you realize that you were like, oh shit, I've done this?
Right.
Yeah. The term's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
And oftentimes where you see that intersection, or at least where I have, is when you have something that is traditionally considered more of, a man topic, and something like beer is a perfect example. It's something that's just historically, at least within the last 100 years, been considered kind of the domain of men. And as a result, even when you have women who are extremely knowledgeable, even when you have women who have credentials, there's an instinct to try to explain basic concepts that they may be as qualified, better qualified, or superiorly qualified to be able to understand and explain back to you. So removing that kind of instinct, removing that kind of first drive to try and assume that there's a base knowledge of zero, that's a huge step forward, and let people show you what they know and show you where they're starting at, because that's the only way to really have a real conversation.
Right. That's great.
Yeah. So to piggyback on that, I think I first heard of it maybe young adult years with like jokes like SNL or something like that. And it's, you know, it's definitely a humbling moment. You think back and it's like, oh, have I ever done that? Probably, and I didn't know.
Right.
But yeah, to, you know, as Aaron was saying, I think a part of it is also the male ego, and, you know, just how guys always love to flex whatever is actual muscle or your mental muscle, or, you know, a braggadocio type thing, to where like, hey, look at me, I'm man, look what I know, and not even listening to the person you're talking to, especially if it's a woman.
Yeah, that is one thing that I've definitely noticed is mansplaining definitely exists. It's definitely out there, but I have certainly seen occasions where, no, we're like that to each other too. We're just all assholes. That's the problem.
It's just like flexing for no reason.
You want to one up each other. And I'll say, I had never even really heard of the term until I got into like beer in the industry. And that's when I began to realize, oh, like this really is a thing. When people try to over explain, it's like, actually, I know this already, so I don't need, you know, your little 2 cents.
Yeah. And one of the first times that I really recognized that I was being mansplained to in the moment, it was, I had gotten hired by craftbeer.com to write an article, and I was being paid for it as, you know, as the person that's like, hey, like how to enter craft beer as a newbie. And one of my friends who is not in beer and is not a writer and has never been paid to write anything, he was like, yeah, so this is what you need to do, and giving me step-by-step instructions. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You have no idea what you're talking about. Exactly. And he was like, what? He was so shocked. He was like, I was like, you are mansplaining. And it was the first time I ever called anybody out, and I felt so powerful. And he got so mad at me. And then he called me like 2 days later. He's like, I'm very sorry. You're absolutely right.
Exactly.
It's almost like when guys like wants to put something like a desk together without looking at the instructions. Like, bro, do you know what you're doing? Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a man. I can put it together. It's like,
Myron, why you gotta call me out like that, dude?
I don't follow the instructions either. I'm like, oh, I got this. Just looking at the pieces, trying to put it together.
So. Yeah, I'm very much a person like when I was putting my couch together, I was like, why do I have so many extra parts? This is sucks.
This will be fine. This won't fall out from under me in 6 months. It'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
Also, shout out to Mikey from Party at 2 Brew Crew. I just saw him enter. Thank you for being here.
Shout out Mikey B.
So, and just the topic in general, show the fuck up. So when you hear something like that, and when we have so many different events, how do you all take that, and how do y'all try to show up for people in the beer industry and women? What does showing up look like to y'all? Myron, you want to get us started?
Yeah. First and foremost, getting out the way. Women are more than capable to do any and everything. So we as men don't need to try to facilitate anything, even from the background. Like there's guys that say, oh, I got you, you know, whatever you need, you know, I'll just step in and say, no, just move, be a participant, you know, be a spectator, and let women do whatever the hell they want to do. And additionally, highlighting what they do. If any woman wants to say, do, show, not do anything at all, just highlight it, you know, give them their flowers. I know we at the podcast, we have this series with Pontoon, we're called Brewing Conversations, where we want to highlight someone from the community, mostly, you know, minorities, and let them do a collaboratory beer with Pontoon, and have a podcast with them to talk about things that their struggles or anything that they're experienced within the craft beer industry. And we did one last year with Craft Women Connect. And we were just
that was so good.
Right. We were just the middleman. We weren't facilitating anything, because it was Jen, of course, is a part of it. And it's like, hey, this is y'all's beer, this is y'all's event. We're just introducing. And boom, we just let them have it. They brewed their own beer from start to finish. We hosted the panel, but it was all about Craft Women Connect. And that's how it should be. Just like this, you know, Caroline and Eugenia, y'all are moderating. Aaron and I are here just like, hey, you want to ask me a question? I'll talk when I'm spoken to. You know.
No, that's great. Those are great points to bring up, and thank you for that. And Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, I would echo what Myron said. I'd also say that one of the most important things to keep in mind is that a lot of the emotional labor for enacting change for any marginalized group tends to fall on the members of that group. So one of the key things to do is just absolutely stay humble and be willing to acknowledge the fact that maybe they understand how that change needs to be affected better than you do. One of the things I will caution, though, is, it's important to be able to take that feedback and be able to be introspective, be able to be reflective on it. But, self-flagellation does nobody any good. And if you spend so much time just beating yourself up, it's good to feel a level of shame and reflection and understanding that you can do better and that you have done wrong. But that does no good for anybody other than yourself. So It's far better to be able to channel that energy, listen to what these groups are telling you needs to be done, the action that needs to be taken, the ways you're able to use your platform and do better and be better and encourage others to be the same. Because there's a whole lot of just really feeling bad about how shitty you've been among white people and among folks who look like me. And that doesn't get anything done. And it doesn't actually accomplish anything for the folks that now you're fully realizing you've probably hurt in the past.
Right. That is such a good point to bring up, and so good to hear from your perspective as well, because there's an example that I can think of. There was, during the Me Too movement, everything like that, that was happening last year, so many men were speaking out, and it was great. It was great to see it. Exactly. But also it's like showing up, but how are you showing up? So, but also taking a step back and seeing what's already being done. There was one guy, and I'm not going to call him out at all because he was so well-intentioned. He's like, he goes on this big thing. He's like, y'all, I am making a t-shirt and it's going to say support women in beer. And it has this like cool script to it. It was almost identical to his t-shirt that already exists and supports a women started organization. And he was so well intended, but he's like, yeah, no, and he does this whole like beautifully written post about how like he wants to show up for women and how he wants to support them. And, it was just like politely being like, dude, this is so beautiful, but also this exists already. So how about you just promote what is already there that is going directly to the woman who started this, and which that original t-shirt was started by Women of the Evolution, Ash Elliott, and it supports funds for women who are going through this. But yes, it was well-intentioned, but
how you go about it matters.
Exactly.
Definitely. And I love what you said, Myron, about just getting out of the way, because I think a lot of times there's this power struggle at play, and, getting out of the way is a big part of it, but then also just being able to yield space to someone else and giving them the floor and giving them the ability to speak. And, when we were asked who we wanted to be on this panel, I definitely thought of Aaron right away, because he's been a huge advocate and a huge ally for me and beer, as a newbie over the years, just trying to really find my place and trying to figure out where I fit. So definitely thank you for that, Aaron. And so then I guess my question for y'all would be, Caroline kind of spoke about how you show up. So we know that it's important to show up for women, but how you show up is just as important. So do you have any examples, or can you share, I guess, like a time where you showed up for someone?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick us off, flip it from the last question. So one of the chief things for me is keeping in mind effective activism, making sure that what you're doing is actually having an effect, and it isn't just there to make you feel self-satisfied and feel good about what you've done. One of the chief questions I think more people, not just in this sphere, but in activism in general, need to ask themselves is not what you want to do, but what you want to accomplish. Because so often there's a whole series of things that you can be doing that feel very intellectually, very morally, very ego satisfying. The problem is they might be getting you further away from your actual goals. So start with what you hope to accomplish. What do you want to see? What are you hoping to actually achieve in this space, in this world? And then ask yourself, when you're looking at what you could be doing, on if that's actually getting you closer or further away, or if that is, counterproductive. Because a lot of the things that feel satisfying, there's a time and a place to cancel people, for example. But in a lot of cases, that has been wielded so much as a weapon that what it winds up doing is actually radicalizing the counter arguments. And there's a lot of study that shows that can actually move the center further and further away from where you want it to be. So yes, they might be wrong. Yes,
because it's like it's trying to fix harm with more harm.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place to be able to fight fire with fire. I'm not saying that we need to just forgive and forget that, but in calling those individuals out, it's important that they be called out. It's important that they be illustrated. But is that actually going to be getting us any further towards actual change and actually making this better for anybody involved? Or does it just feel really good to be able to call somebody out online? And so that I've had to learn as well.
I am so glad you brought that up, because that has been something that I have struggled with a lot with. I love this movement. I love it's happening and it has to happen, but I'm about accountability. And these people that are out there that are out for blood, I do not have common ground with them. There's got to be accountability. There's got to be, we can't just cancel because one person made a mistake. We have to let them show up and figure out how they're going to address what happened and allow them to show that change. And because there are a lot of people having to decipher, like we were talking about this yesterday, people who are actually trying to affect change, and people are just fucking clout chasers,
right?
Just trying to and it's really hard to see that happen. And it's difficult because I've seen beer accounts that I've respected for a very long time that have really I can't follow them anymore because I'm like, I don't respect you. I don't respect what you're doing. And I don't respect the way that you're doing it.
Well, I mean, it's really tough. And I've even seen it play out even with respect to the greater role of women within this industry recently. And without diving into specifics of individuals, there was an individual who wrote a book chronicling the history of women in beer. And she wound up getting a lot of flack for the non-inclusion of one individual she interviewed in the book for reasons that went above and beyond the book. And that wound up spiraling into a circumstance where we now have what is effectively the closest thing to a mainstream tome, at least bringing the participation in the history of women within the beer experience into the mainstream, that's now effectively become verboten almost overnight. And, yes, I can understand that there's an argument to be made that, maybe she didn't do everything that she should be doing, or maybe that, there was messaging missing, or maybe there was an argument there. But are we doing more harm or doing more good for actually helping women receive greater recognition and greater position within this industry? And that's not me trying even to come down on the side of that, but there's a whole lot of things that are intellectually very satisfying that we can be doing, especially online, that don't necessarily actually make life better for anybody, including the aggrieved party. But to go back to the actual question, something that I always make a point of doing, I love the Pink Boots Society. One of the things I think is very valuable is having more groups like Lifting Lucy, for example, that do a good job of being able to elevate and support and provide resources to groups that traditionally have had not only a hard time breaking into the industry, but receiving due recognition and due support within the industry. So every year for my birthday, I always make a point of doing fundraiser for Pink Boots Society. I've been very active in any of the events that they roll as well. Usually as behind the scenes as I can be, while still hoping to amplify and increase some of the awareness surrounding that as well.
Yeah, awesome. And Pink Boots Society, I'm a member of Pink Boots Society. It's something that I really appreciate. As far as getting people actually involved in the industry and outreach, they do fail in that regard. I don't think that and I don't want to say fail. I think they have work to do, because they're very just people, if you're already in the industry, I don't think that they make an effort to really get more people outside of who's already in the industry. It's just kind of this endless cycle of people who are already there. And I just don't I wish that they would be a little bit more diverse with their higher ups and the people at their corporate office. I think that they need to take an inward look and be a little bit more inclusive and understanding, especially the way that they allocate their scholarships and their funds. So love Pink Boots Society. I love being a member, but there's a lot of organizations like Craft Women Connect that are actually really involved in hey, if you're a consumer of beer, or if you are in the beer industry, you're welcome here. We're trying to get more people interested in beer, and not to talk shit about Pink Boots. I'm sorry, keep cutting off.
I was just going to say, so for those that don't know, if you're watching and you want to know what Pink Boots is, it is an organization, and to counter your point, it is industry focused. So it is industry focused for individuals in the industry, especially women or individuals that identify as female, to actually have a safe place where they can learn and receive education as it relates to beer in this industry. And I do think we've seen across craft beer as a whole, us realizing that there's a lot more we should be doing and we need to be doing. And so I definitely think, there are tons of people that are involved trying to help make those changes. A lot of times it doesn't happen overnight. And so that's where we have to kind of extend that grace and just be open to changes and open to accepting new people and But I definitely think Pink Boots as an organization realized they can do better, and they've been trying to do better.
They have
and so it's just nice to even have an organization like that exists, because we know that beer is a boys' game, and it has been for so long. And even going back to Aaron and talking about that book, to have a book that highlights and represents, women being a part of this from the very beginning is nothing that I think we've ever really had before. And so it's just amazing that, people are yielding space and supporting things that are done by women. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Myron, to that point as far as how have you kind of shown up? I know you kind of shared the experience with Craft Women Connect and the podcast and brewing that beer, but anything else that stands out to you?
Yeah. Outside of that, I think a big portion of supporting anybody, and like Aaron was saying, like marginalized groups, and in this case, women, which of course have been historically marginalized. Big portion of supporting is having those tough conversations in your most intimate circles. So yes, we can put on a podcast, we can put on an event, we can, join an organization and show up, we can call people out online, but lots of the changes that are effective happen is when I'm hanging out with my homeboys in my fantasy football chat and someone is making a misogynistic comment to someone like, hey bro, that's not cool. Well, why? There are no females here. Why are you saying that? I was like, well, this is the problem. Because if you can help to change your mindset or the mindset of your peers, then they can act differently when you're not around. So recently, well, it's an ongoing thing, not that it's like a one task. In one of my fantasy football chats, of course, it's a bunch of testosterone. It's sports, it's arguing, it's whatever. And I have made it a point to where when anybody brings up double standards, which there are tons of them, right. It's like, hey, and this is probably not really beer related at all, but just supporting women in general. We were having a conversation about dating, and they were talking about how, I can't marry a woman who's been with X amount of men. I'm just like, well, how many women have you been with?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's also that male ego thing of like, oh man, I got like mad chicks, blah, 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 right. blah, blah. So I was like, oh, so you're a hoe. And I shit you not. A lot of them were saying, well, yeah, but there's a good hoe and a bad hoe. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Oh God.
You cannot be serious right now, dude.
Right.
I can't.
I was like, you can't condemn someone else for actions that you yourself do. And so, I think that's something that has always been done and is always going on, is shaming women for whatever they do that men don't agree with.
Right.
Yeah.
And having those conversations in your most intimate circles, your best friends, your sports groups, your family, without women there, so they can't show out and be like, oh, well, yeah, I support women, but in the background, you talking shit. It's like, right. No, the locker room talk, that's when I think it's really supportive of how men can really show up to change the mindsets of your friends, your peers, your coworkers, so that when they go out, they at the very least, think about like, oh man, he did call me out, for me thinking this or saying this. So next time I go to work, I'm not going to, catcall a woman or say, oh, well, you don't know what you're doing. Let me show you how to do it. It's like, no,
yeah,
chill out, bro.
And that's a platform too. And I think a lot of people feel like they don't even have the platform to affect change. And, your friends, your family, the people you're close with, the people you're around, your coworkers, that's still a platform. Does it reach hundreds of thousands of people? Maybe not, but it's a platform. And that can be extremely effective.
Yeah. And go ahead. I'm sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
I was just saying use it, but no.
Well, and I was going to say, the topic for today is show the fuck up, but it's not about how you show the fuck up when people are watching, because we all do the right thing when people are watching.
Right.
But it's when people aren't watching, and like you said, in your most intimate settings with your friends, or, talking with people, whether it's at the brewery in the tap room, or whether it's home and you're at a share, making sure that you address stuff that is inappropriate and just downright just ignorant. That's when it's most important that you show up. And so I love that you brought that up, Myron, because we all like to do the right thing when someone's looking, but it's like, what are you doing behind closed doors? What language are you using? What words are you using? Mm-hmm. And I think that's just so critical to this conversation.
Yeah. And also, like, how are you physically showing up too? So yes, like behind closed doors when no one's watching, like, you know, if it's someone else's event, are you showing up? Like, are you physically showing up? Are you liking their Instagram posts? Are you following them on Instagram? Are you making sure that your social media feed is representative of what you outwardly want to present? Because really it's so easy to support people, like, you know, all the information that Eugenia shares, and like especially like the access to education and the people that you highlight. So being able to engage with that content, or if somebody posts something, sharing it to your story, it's free, but it does so much for the engagement of voices that don't always get amplified.
Well, and I would say even, you know, a big thing is talking about people or lifting people up, even when they're not in the room. And that's one thing I can say that, you know, I'm just your cheerleader today, Aaron, but you've done for me is having conversations with people when I wasn't even around, and, you know, presenting me with a new opportunity that I never even knew was even on the radar or I had the potential to do. And so I think how you show up and making sure that you are lifting other women up in different conversations and different opportunities is also really important, because we know there's always a guy you can probably think of immediately that could possibly fill that role or could do that one thing. But you know what? Why don't we look somewhere else for talent in this pool? Instead of looking in the same place, let's look somewhere else. So I think that's also really key.
Yuji, I'm just fortunate enough to ride in your wake.
Oh, we have a great, I think it's important to note women shaming women behind their back in the industry as well. It happens often. It's hindering the change. Women can call women out without shaming them and hindering change in the industry. Do it maturely, but don't go around canceling and talking bad about them and to other members. Yeah. I mean, also it's just about having that conversation too, and being able to talk to them, because, you know, women against women never works. But also being able to go to that woman and say, or go to that person and say, hey, I don't appreciate what you're doing here. Like, I don't think it's conducive of a good environment, or because it just gives more fuel for any men that want to have something against women to go by. And I do think that women get a lot more flack in this industry than men when it comes to holding themselves accountable. But it is important for us to hold women accountable as well, because we have to, in order to really be inclusive as an industry, we have to hold women to that same standards. Like what you just said, Myron, you know, like if, you know, if your guy friend's like, oh yeah, I don't want to be with a woman who's been with like so many people, but dude, you're a hoe. Like, it's being like, hey, like, how are you showing up in this industry? Are you behaving professionally? Are you,
Right.
Are you doing is the way you show up in this industry moving it forward, or are you moving it backwards? And so, and as far as the shaming goes, it's really got to be, it's just got to be like a conversation and calling people out, but also being like, hey, let's talk about this. How are you going to affect change here?
And respect goes a long way. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that, you know, we wanted to focus on how men can show up for women today in this conversation, but showing up for each other is just as critical, is just as key. Mm-hmm. Me and Caroline, we've known each other's online presence for a while, but we didn't meet in person until maybe a few months ago. Yeah. And I mean, from day one, just the support and the mutual support has been amazing. And I think not only do we expect or we need men to show up for us, but we also have to show up for each other.
Right.
I do like another point that you brought up, Eugenia, is when people are trying to fill roles in whether it's a job, whether it's an event, whether it's a collaborator or something, to make a concerted effort to look in marginalized areas. Exactly. So if, you know, I've talked to recruiters and, you know, I work in the IT industry, and then when certain recruiters like look at, you know, list a resume, it's just like, hey, you have, you know, 2 people that's qualified. And I'm like, is one of them black? I'm like, yep, that's what I'm going with. Like, just because it's so underrepresented. So if you are filling a brewer's role, if you are, and not just the front of the house, of course, bartenders and front of the house usually are women because they bring in the money, right? Because guys are trash and but the back of the house is where you always see typically guys. So if you need a brewer, an assistant brewer, a head brewer, whatever, why don't you, if you have a list of 5 qualified candidates and one of them women, get the woman, period.
I really,
you know, if you need somebody on the business side of your brewery or your, you know, brew bar, whatever like that, pick the woman.
Sorry.
it's something that, like you said earlier, Caroline, this is a predominantly male and white male industry. It's going to go a long way for women in this industry to actually put them into positions where they can shine and they can make a difference for themselves.
Right.
Well, and we also have a pretty significant pipeline problem within the industry. And that's something that's not always even popular to say because, I know it's so easy for a lot of people to fall back on well, we don't get Black candidates, we don't get women who are applying for these positions. Here's the unpopular thing. It's actually true. The problem there is the fact that we're making no steps to try and reach beyond our typical pipeline. So think about the craft beer industry as a perfect example. Where are most people within the craft brewing industry sourced from? Other people in the craft brewing industry. What is the craft brewing industry? Most people look like me.
Exactly.
So of course, most of your candidates are going to flow through there. And in the service industry, we largely hire people from other breweries to work behind the bar. And that has a tendency to.
Sorry, Scott. Thank you,
Scott.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we also don't do nearly enough of is making sure that we're hiring within the communities that our businesses are located and not just hiring from within the industry. So we are hiring from our community. The problem is we're hiring from the craft beer community. Again,
right.
Whereas if we put more focus into hiring from around our communities, posting on community boards and not just places like Brewbound, putting out more public job opportunities rather than just hiring through the grapevine or hiring on industry-specific forums, that goes an enormous way towards sourcing some more of those candidates because the best qualified person for that position might only not be in your stack of resumes because they didn't have an opportunity to know the job exists in the first place.
Exactly.
Yes. And also the way, like, I think that's such a great point to bring up too. And the way that the job is listed, like you said, like, is it really necessary to list that this person has to lift over 100 pounds every day? Like, is that really going to be an everyday part of their job? Or, just things around that. But, and also I want to acknowledge Scott I saw his comment. Scott Nichols is a huge ally. He is just a huge beer fan. He's part of our Tuesday night drinking club, but he shows up for everything. He will show up as a volunteer to festivals. He will show up to events. He shows up to he's been at Crafted for Action this whole time. Just such a great, huge ally. That's the perfect example of, ways that you can show up in this industry. And yes, Wrigley made a cameo. Wrigley likes attention. If y'all hear him in the background, I apologize. He's my child.
One thing I did want to kind of point out, a lot of times when you're having conversations about looking at your hiring pool, I guess the counter argument would be, okay, well, you're still being exclusionary to people who may be qualified, trying to pull in like a more diverse candidate base. And one thing I will say, and I think you kind of touched on it, Aaron, what the pipeline is, for a lot of people, maybe they never even consider working at a brewery or being in the beer industry on their radar. And so if you never even thought that there was an opportunity there, then why would you apply? I mean, why would you go about, breaking into that industry? And so, yeah, like you said, that statement about not having a lot of minority applicants is very true. But then going back to just the history of it all, because it's always been seen as this kind of white male industry, you felt like you didn't have that access to entry. So, we know that there are tons of barriers to entry, but even knowing that, that's a possibility, I think is something that we're just now seeing in the past, I don't even know how many years, seeing more breweries and things become more diverse because it is an option. I can be a brewer, I can own a brewery. I can be a tap room manager, so I think that's important.
Yeah, not erecting more active barriers or not, proposing active barriers to people feeling comfortable within a space isn't enough. You have to take down some of the passive and the systemic barriers while you do it. Otherwise, you're just maintaining the status quo.
Exactly.
And Myron, you were about to say something as well.
Yeah, I do like the point that Eugenia brought up as far as like when people bring up a counter argument saying that, by trying to hire from a specific demographic, you're being exclusionary. I call bullshit on anybody who brings up that argument.
Okay.
It's because the vast majority of people who bring up the argument are from the majority.
Right.
Like
they're white people. They're upset.
You can just start pointing at me. That's okay.
Like I remember
welcome to the world. This is how everyone else has felt the whole time.
I remember when Wonder Woman movie first came out, and a couple theaters were doing women-only showings. There were so many mad dudes, so many. I'm just like, why are you mad? There are thousands of theaters. Go and see the fucking movie. You're mad because they want only women to watch a movie highlighting a heroine? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, stop it. So I definitely wholeheartedly support being exclusionary for the right reasons. Hey, we're hiring somebody for this position. I would like for them to not be white or male. Period. Right. Hey, if you want to call me out on that, that's fine. I don't need you as a friend if that's a problem for you. In the industry that's 95% white male, yeah, let's throw some pepper in there.
And like Aaron said, you have to go back and address it from a historical standpoint, because a lot of this is very systemic. And so, understanding that history and then understanding like this industry as a whole will kind of shed light on its practices and why, there is truly a need for change. And someone just commented and shared that, they wish that we were around when they were in the industry. And it's sad because the industry has lost a lot of amazing people.
Yes.
Because they didn't feel like anyone ever showed up for them. It's true. Whether it was showing up for them as a woman, showing up for them as a marginalized person. I mean, I think we have to acknowledge that there's a power struggle always at play. And even those men being upset by that women-owned theater, it's like, okay, you have this power struggle at play. You have tons of theaters you can walk in and probably feel safe. But as a woman, do you have as many? And so I think this conversation is just so important, and recognizing systemically how a lot of these things affects the industry is just as important.
You're absolutely right. And that's where it's just showing up in that way is just so important, but also and I love that we keep coming back to this, like the conversations that you're having with your friends, because I feel like the reason that I've become the person that I am is because if I say something stupid, my friends are like, hey, that's stupid.
We'll check you.
And it's like, it is stupid. I don't want to feel stupid. And it's just like that's the best way that we really can. And and also like with more and more topics coming up. So one thing that I've really loved is, of course, I hate this is even in the ether, is even in the air, but the Roe v. Wade discussion. But I have been so impressed by the men in my life and the men in this industry by the way that they are like, no, fuck this shit. Like, this is ridiculous, talking about it, but being open to talk about it, but also understanding, because I was at an event last week and it was two guys and I didn't even bring it up. They did. And they started talking and then they look at me and they go, you're being really quiet. Are you okay? Are you comfortable with this? And I go, I'm fucking tired. I'm tired of having to stand up for my right to my body. And I'm so grateful I'm listening to this. And I want y'all, I'm not going to ever stop y'all from having this conversation. Thank you. And they were so understanding, and just knowing that the women in your life are fucking tired. So y'all having these conversations, it made me feel energized the rest of the day, knowing that I did not have to bring this up. I didn't, and they were the ones talking about how ridiculous it was. Just something so simple is so powerful.
Definitely.
Yeah, this Roe v. Wade stuff. I mean, Caroline, you know me. I'm the first person to say that America's trash.
Yeah.
So, this is just par for the course. It's unfortunate that it seems to be happening. But to your point, having any and everybody, especially not just the people. At the beginning of this panel, Aaron, you said that, it's usually the burden of the oppressed for them to speak up for themselves. And Caroline, you just said you're tired. It's like, I'm fucking over it. We've been talking about this for decades, and now you want to bring this shit up 50 years later. You know what? Fuck it. Do what you want to do. I'm done. And you need other people to be tired of it too, and upset and angry. So that's a good point you brought up.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And definitely your last statement, you need other people to be tired and angry. That is so important, because when does change typically occur? When you have a group of people that are angry enough about it. And it's sad that anger has to be the emotion that we show sometimes, but let's change anger and change it to passion. But having enough people that are passionate about something to change it makes all the difference. A person realizing that, what, we need a pink boot society, because, I'm a woman working in beer and I just don't feel like I'm getting what I need. And so having that passion, I think is so important. And like I said, I can't stress enough understanding like power struggles, because having that majority group advocate and act as an ally, a lot of times we need that to truly get things done, because you have to look at, where the decisions being made and who has the ability to make the decisions. So,
Exactly.
And if I could pipe in on one thing too, is anger is important. But the difficulty with anger and shame is they run out of runway, because people are going to be angry or the people who are angry. People are going to feel shame are the ones who already feel bad about what's happening. But at the end of the day, you're never going to get real action unless you're able to convince enough people on the other side to make it so that action is lucrative. That action is something that can actually start to happen. So you need that to activate people. You need that to be able to get people working, get people hustling, get people actually trying to convince folks. But I've always found that one of the best ways to convince folks is make a real simple case for them, make something that actually it benefits them, even in their own selfish self-interest, benefits them. So as an industry, it's very, very simple. Every time somebody tells me we have 9,500 breweries and that we are completely saturated, can shut the fuck up, because we have not done anything to appeal to more than 65% of the fucking population that is women or people of color.
Exactly.
We have a lot more runway if we just open our damn minds. We're leaving an enormous amount of innovation and talent on the table that could be hugely lucrative, financially, creatively, passionately for this industry if we just open that table up a little more.
Big facts.
About 32% of craft beer drinkers right now, regular craft beer drinkers, are women, and that has increased pretty dramatically over the last 20 years. Continues to increase still. Now, here's the real kicker, and here's the real important part. Not only have we been doing that while not only actively making no effort to appeal to them, or market to them, or speak to them, or make them feel welcome, but we have actively done the opposite in a lot of circumstances. Meanwhile, if you look at developed craft beer cultures like Portland, for example, 54% of regular craft beer drinkers in Portland, Oregon are women. If we are seeing that kind of forward progression, that kind of advancement, that kind of interest from women, the fastest growing segment of drinkers in America, then there is not only a very real future, but an inevitability that craft beer drinkers can, should, and will be predominantly women, majority women, at least at parity. Down the line. So it's incumbent on us to take those steps now for the survival, for the health, for the growth of this business, this industry, especially as we're reaching kind of a maturation point, to try and move forward, to try and progress, to try and make this a more welcoming space, to try and speak to that demographic. Hispanics drink more beer per capita than any other demographic in the US, and almost none of it's craft beer, because we do nothing to try and reach them, do nothing to try and make them feel included. So every time I hear people talking about, it's craft beer. It just happens to be white. Let's even look at it completely financially and self-interested. It's still in your best interest to try and just be a better person and to try and make these changes a reality.
Exactly. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I really appreciate that. And it's so true. And we have a comment here from a Facebook user. I really wish there had been more support for women, non-binary, trans, two-spirit, etc. in my area. I left the industry due to how people not 20 to 30-ish white and male are treated. I'm married, 40s, gay person. So that is just, first off, that makes my heart hurt. When I think about, I do this, so I run a bunch of film festivals as well. And one of the things that I say is one of the things that breaks my heart the most is how many stories have gone untold because of lack of resources. Thinking about all the beer that has gone unbrewed because of women, talented women that have, and people who identify, LGBTQ plus community, people who have left this industry because they felt marginalized and did not feel welcome. Exactly. We have such an opportunity here to amplify people who really are here just because they love beer. And for us to, as an industry, shy away from anybody that loves beer is just, we have to be ashamed of that, and we have to find a way to be better. And I'm glad that things are moving in a good direction, but I do hope that people who have left the industry have, reconsider coming back, or at least encouraging people to come back.
Because a lot of times we need these people, and that's what makes it so sad, is that we need you, but you know, there are a lot of people that have, it's funny, growing up, I would call it church hurt, but have industry hurt. You know, you love this industry so much, you love the beer, you love the people, but you've just been burnt too many times, or you just like, you don't have the capacity to continue fighting. And so, you know, our conversation today focuses on showing up for women, but showing up for everybody and supporting each other and making this a place where, you know, everybody is celebrated and appreciated, because we know, like Aaron said, the end game, yeah, breweries want to make money. It's all about the bottom line. Well, end game, we know you can make more money if you change the way that you market your product, if you realize how important it is to include other demographics and groups of people. So it's not about just the touchy and feely and making everyone feel good. This has a direct action as far as your profits are concerned. So you would think it would be easy buy-in, but then we still have people that are not really sure, you know, if this is really important. But one thing I love about Aaron is he always comes with the facts. He has the data and the statistics to prove what it is that he is saying. So thank you for that, Aaron.
Yes, no, thank you for that. And I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Myron and what you do with the Atlanta podcast. You guys are just, ever since I first met y'all. So the first time I met them was in Myron's basement. I drove out to Tucker and it was pitch black outside. And they were like, oh, hey, yeah, we're doing the podcast in the basement. I was like, okay. But I had the best time and I just felt so welcome. Y'all do such a good job with your podcast guests and the platform that you all have created here in this industry. And not just in craft beer, but just in Atlanta. Y'all are a staple in Atlanta. So what do you think are ways that, because I don't feel like you all are the kind of guys that are clout chasers just trying to be like, oh, I guess we need to have a woman on. I feel like you're always so genuine in the way that you want to support people around you. What are some ways that you can suggest for other people who, you know, that can also show up in the same way that y'all have shown up in the conversations that y'all have?
I would say meet people.
Ooh, I love that.
The good thing about beer or alcohol in general is that's one of the major common threads with all humans, or most humans, is that, you know, beer and food, you know, alcohol and food is something you can go to a table, a bar, and just commune with people, whether it's a friend or a complete stranger. You know, as many times I've gone to an event, a bar, a restaurant, and it's just like, you know, you overhear somebody talking about something you may be interested. It really doesn't matter. You're like, oh, hey, you like that? I like that too. And it could be somebody that you wouldn't even think that you would talk to or be friends with or potential friends with. So go out and actually meet people and talk to people and actually get to know them. And then that's what, you know, spurs action. Because I mean, just like you said, when we met, you know, I'm just like, if I hadn't talked to Caroline in general, you know, other than just like, hey, how are you, whatever, and hadn't seen, you know, if I knew nothing about her, I was like, oh, hey, it's just this white girl who was like, oh, yeah. Like, all right, whatever. But mad cool peoples. But that's part of like one of our initiatives, Brewing Conversations, is to have those conversations with groups of people that you would not usually talk to. Come to the bar and talk to me, 68-year-old white man. And come to the bar and talk to me, you know, Indonesian, you know, woman, talk to me, you know, and have in a safe space, ask questions, talk to, you know, like, oh, I thought this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, that's actually a stereotype or whatever, and not get offended. And getting to know people helps to change people's perception of you or other people. You know, and I'm a big people watcher. I like to meet people. I like to see, you know, people doing stuff. You know, I like to think about how people think, how people tick, you know, why people do or say what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is just meeting people. Because once you meet somebody new, then, you know, you get new ideas like, oh shit, well, maybe we can hang out sometime, right? Mm-hmm. And then get exposed to other things that you weren't exposed to. And then that spurs more innovation. And it's like, oh, well, shit, this is, you know, 5 people who all have the same interests. Why don't we do something together?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that's such a beautiful point to bring up, because it's like, yeah, like, I mean, y'all from the Atlanta podcast, y'all are like family at this point. I've watched your kids grow up. I'm friends with all your wives. Like, I love seeing y'all everywhere. And y'all have always been such a good resource, even like for me, like, cause I remember during, after the murder of George Floyd, talking to you all, like, what the fuck can I do? Like, I was just, so being able to, like, y'all being there for advice for me, even though like it's a lot to ask, to like, you shouldn't have to be a teacher of mine, but it's also like, how can I show up? What can I do? And we had probably one of my favorite episodes on Bitch Beer when I had y'all on, and we had just a really open, candid discussion about all the shit that was going on. So being able to feel comfortable talking to people that are different background from your own and different experience is just, you're absolutely right. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Did you want to add, Erin, as far as any advice, I guess, you would have for people that are wanting to show up for others, but don't necessarily know how to navigate that space or how to go about it?
Yeah, I think Myron really said it extremely eloquently. Getting out and actually meeting people is the first step, because if you don't know, if you want to be able to help the Black community, you don't know any Black people, it makes it real hard to be able to ask the obvious question, which is, what can I do to help? Now, I've been very fortunate. I've lived 17 different places on 2 continents, all over the world. I've been very, very fortunate in being able to be exposed to a huge array of people from all over. And if there's some things I've learned we're all a lot more like each other than we are not alike. And most of the differences that we have are to everyone's benefit, not to everyone's detriment. It helps grow and see things from different perspectives. But if we have nothing else, to Myron's point, we have beer. It's an excellent starting point. If you got nothing else in common, you got that. I can't stand country music. I'm talking to somebody from Nashville, and that's all they do is go to country music concerts, but they happen to like IPA. We got a starting point. I'm still not going to listen to Luke Bryan. You can't make me, but at the very least, we got a place to start the conversation. And it's one of the most beautiful things about food, about beverage, about those, is that they really help give you the seed of a conversation. So I always urge people, get out of the places that you're comfortable. And, that entails not just going to, places other than your usual bar. I think everybody should live away from their hometown for at least a year.
Amen. Go leave the country once in a while too.
Everybody. And, don't be afraid to open yourself up to new experiences, new opportunities, because every time that you say no, you're not just leaving that individual experience on the table, but everything you're going to learn and gain from it. So the more people that you're able to know and to meet, to understand and appreciate, that gives you that many more resources to be able to turn to. Because I know one of the huge problems that I hear all the time, I do think most people are fundamentally well-intentioned as well as self-interested, but a lot of folks who look like me, they want to help, but they don't know how to help. And right now we're having a bit of an overcorrection where helping the wrong way is more risky than not helping at all. So having the resources to be able to turn to and say, hey guys, what can I do? You clearly know better than I'm going to, and I'm guessing at best. How can I help? How can I support? Just taking that first step to be willing to ask and be humble and to recognize that maybe you don't know how is the best way to help is the first step towards actually making a difference.
And that's okay if you don't know how.
Yeah.
It's okay. Fine. Asking questions, and that's why having conversations is so important. Meeting people is so important because, and like you said, you wanted to help, but you didn't know how. And so you had the relationship with Myron where you could ask. And, it's not about dumping that emotional labor on him. It's about wanting to do something and in a positive way. And the relationship is mutually beneficial.
But also making sure that the way that I was helping was appropriate, because I actually talked with Myron and Christian because I did a different intro for that episode of my podcast, because I took a break from the podcast during the protests and everything. I protested for 19 days and I did a lot of listening, a lot of talking. But I did this intro and I wanted to kind of sum up 2020 and all the crazy things. And I included sound bites. And one of the sound bites I initially included was of what happened to George Floyd. And Christian was like, hey, like, I understand what you're going for here, but that's not what needs to be included in this. And I was like, fucking thank you. Right. Because it's not that I had good intentions, but also like I was just so caught up in the emotions of it that I wasn't really thinking about what that effect could have had. So like Myron and Christian being able to help me and come in for me, like that was great. Like just being able to have y'all to help guide me in the right way, it was so valuable. So that's why I just love that y'all are such close friends of mine, and it's great.
Awesome. All right, so I think we're coming close to the end. So let's see if we have any questions for anyone on the panel. And then we'll kind of go over any last words or final thoughts, and then give us some background on how people can stay in contact with you. So let's see, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have some great people in here. Yeah, please. So Chanel is in here. Thank you, Chanel. We've got Joel from Halfway in Atlantucky in here. Thank you, Joel. Gosh, we love LaTroya. Vivian Rogers. We're so happy for all these great people. Facebook users, Scott. Thank you all for being here. Ebony, yay, we love Ebony. What a great, it's just so valuable and so rewarding to see our friends on here watching and just sharing in this conversation. If there's any questions for people watching, please go ahead and comment. I've got the comments up.
While we wait for that, let's do final thoughts.
Yes.
Any final thoughts that you want to add to this topic and this conversation? And like we both said, thank you so much for being a part of this, because there have been so many times where I wanted to just give up and just say, you know what, fuck this beer shit, like so many times. But I've had some amazing people that constantly kind of poured into me in my life, and whether they just patted me on the back and said, keep doing it, or you know what, I believe in your brand. So I'm so grateful for people that have showed up for me. But any final words or last thoughts that you both have?
All right. No pressure. No, I just want to say thank you so much for thinking of me, for having me on, for giving me the ability to speak on something that I'm passionate about, but also it's so important. I'm extremely privileged to know so many people from around this industry who don't look like me, and a ton of people who do look like me. And those things can live in tension, and those things can live at the same time. But I think one of the most fundamental things to keep in mind is that it's okay to acknowledge how amazing this industry is while still acknowledging the problems that it has, because that's what makes it worth fighting to improve. If the industry sucked, it wouldn't do us any good to be trying to get more people into it. But at the same time, loving something doesn't mean blindly thinking it has no problems, because that's the moment it stagnates. That's the moment you become blind to making it even better. So, there's a famous comic book scene that I reference all the time where the government's trying to get Captain America to do something against his what he believes in. And he has this famous line of, I don't stand for you. I don't stand for anything. I'm only loyal to the dream. It's okay to acknowledge America has all this wonderful stuff about it and a really dark freaking history and a ton of shit that still needs to improve. It's okay to acknowledge that the craft beer industry has got a lot of amazing things at its core, but we still have a whole lot of problems that we can fix and a whole lot of areas that we can make it better and improve. And the only thing that's not going to make that better, and the only thing that's not going to move that needle at all, is sitting around and doing nothing. So get out, do something.
Well said. I love that. Yes. Okay.
Right. First and foremost, shout out to Jen, for putting this together, for doing to advocate for not only for herself, her brand, but just for women in general. She's an amazing person, amazing human being. So definitely shout out to Jen. Shout out to both of you. I know Caroline, but it's the first time meeting you, Eugenia, and you, Aaron. And this was such a pleasure to talk about, this and meeting you all. But yeah, just piggybacking on what Aaron said, get out, do something, meet people. Don't just have those intimate conversations with just people who either look like you or people who have your same thoughts or mindsets.
Right.
Because a pet peeve of mine is when people say, the age-old joke, which is real too, but hey, when white people say, I have a black friend, you probably do. And that's nice. For that person may or may.
My grandmother has a black friend that
goes
to church with her.
Your friend you grew up with, and y'all have similar, likes, dislikes, and mindsets. But hey, it's okay to have friends, acquaintances, or whatever who have different thoughts than you. So go out and meet those people, hang out with those people. And if you ever see women at a bar or brewery, one, chill out and back up. But two, don't try to say, hey, I see they got an IPA there. You know how many IBUs in there? Stop. Just relax, man. People are there just to drink and have fun.
Exactly.
I might have a package, but
Amazon.
We're about to wrap up, so why don't you tell us how we can follow you all and stay in touch with you, Myron?
Sure. First and foremost, you can follow the podcast at The Atlanta Podcast on IG, YouTube, Facebook.
They are the real Atlanta podcast. They are the original Atlanta podcast.
Correct. Don't be fooled by perpetrators, imitators, anything like that. The Atlanta Podcast. And then personally, Jack of all drafts, and that's draft spelled DRAUGHTS, not with the F the real way. And so, hey, what's up, Marcus?
Hey, Marcus. Oh, I love Marcus. Pontoon is so great. I could have, I had Schwiggles the other day. Ashley brought some, and I was Ashley and Allie, I was like, love y'all so much.
So yeah, The Atlanta Podcast and Jack of all drafts. And if you're ever in Atlanta, don't hesitate to shout out. I'll try to come through if I can. I got 2 small kids, so more than likely I'll just say, hey, come to the crib and we can crack open some beers on the porch or something like that. So just shout out.
Awesome. Aaron, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'll echo Myron's caution that I got 2 small kids too, so give me some warning first. So you can find Bhavana online at Find Bhavana, at Find Bhavana, pretty much any of the social media sectors, Bhavana.com. We've got an e-commerce site going live here in just a couple of weeks. And for me personally, you can find me on Instagram at Ale Chaser. You can also follow me on Facebook. Yuji knows that's pretty much my predominant social media platform. Instagram is mostly pictures of my kids and pictures of food that I make. But aside from that, look me up. I bounce around. And if you guys are in the North Carolina area right now, please check out Court Shoes Only, the collaboration beer that I help run to raise money for acing autism. I
have one in my fridge. Hoppy Hayes gave it to me.
You.
Yeah, I have one in my fridge. I'm so excited about it.
Awesome, man. No. Yeah, we raised $24,000 for acing autism last year. And then some this year. We rolled it out across the whole state. North Carolina beer scene has been absolutely wonderful in helping.
I love North Carolina.
Yeah, just in general, look me up and keep me in mind. And I always love having a conversation, meeting new amazing people from around the beer industry or adjacent to it.
Definitely. All right, I guess we can share where they can find us, Caroline. So Eugenia, aka Black Beer Chick. So that is at Black Beer Chick on Instagram. You can also check out my website, blackbeerchick.com.
And I am Caroline King, Bitch Beer Podcast. I am the only woman in this industry that it's okay to yell bitch across a crowded room, and I will be super happy about it.
I'm not
Caroline, as soon as you said that, I just thought about Silk Sonic, Bruno Mars, and then he was like, this bitch.
That's me.
Thank you guys. We appreciate you so much. And thank you all for watching.
And Allie just joined. Yay. Thank you, Allie. Love Allie from Pontoon. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. Thank you for showing the fuck up.
Yes.
Cheers, y'all.
Cool.
Cheers.